Hey everyone, this is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Monday, everybody. Today we are going to take a look once more at Jupiter's entrance into Aries, but today we're going to run it through all 12 signs. Take a look at your rising sign horoscope for the month ahead, which is going to give you a look at the specific house that Jupiter is entering in your birth chart. Of course, you could always pick your sun sign if you wanted to listen to it as a sun sign horoscope as well. Before we do that, what I'm going to do is also, we're going to take a look at Jupiter and Aries from a new angle today. I've got a passage from a book I've been reading that I really like that I'm going to read to you. It's a kind of a new way of thinking about Jupiter in Aries, one that we have not yet covered in previous talks. I'm trying to add new dimensions to this placement as we go. It's always a good idea to turn the archetypal jewel of an astrological transit several times to get several different angles of what you might experience. So we're going to turn it yet another way today, take a look at Jupiter into Aries, and then apply that understanding to the entrance of Jupiter into all 12 whole sign houses based on rising signs. And again, you could just listen to that. You could choose your sun sign to listen to rather than your rising sign and just treat it like a sun sign horoscope if you preferred. All right, well, that being said, don't forget, please like and subscribe, share your comments in the comment section. All of that helps the channel to grow. Really appreciate it when you guys do that. Transcripts of my daily talks can be found on my website, nightlightastrology.com. Also, my new class, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic, starts on June 5th. I'm really excited about this. It's coming up soon. You can learn more about it by visiting my website, which is nightlightastrology.com. Scroll up to the top and click on the Courses tab. Click on the first year course in particular, and then you'll be taken to the page where you can learn more about what the program includes. There's an FAQ section. Probably will answer your questions there. Of course, if you have questions, you can always email us, info@nightlightastrology.com. The class includes 30 online webinars that I lead throughout the year. The meetings are on Sundays starting June 5th. We meet from 11 a.m. Central or noon Eastern time until 2 or 3 Eastern time, or 1 or 2 Central time. So it's all classes are always between 2 to 3 hours. There's 30 classes on the year. In between classes, we have breakout tutoring sessions with my staff. There's a discussion forum all year round. You can ask questions and interact with everyone else in the classroom. You can email me for support anytime. We have 12 guest lectures that come outside of our 30 classes. So by the time you stack all that up, there's a ton of content and opportunities for learning and interacting and creating community. In fact, as I'm recording this today, we just graduated a new group of people who came through the one-year program. About 70% of the people in that group are going on to take the second-year program. They liked it so much. So, to me, that's just a testimony to the way that we've been able to structure this as a team of people that create and maintain this course. Of course, I lead the course, but there's a whole group of people that are there helping us to always support and make the class better. There's tons of bonus material. You can record, everything's recorded. If you can't make the live webinars, you can download and keep everything. You have perpetual access to the classes. So it's always there to kind of take at your own pace. There's an optional certification exam at the end if you want to check that out as well. Payment options at the bottom, you'll find there's an early bird payment, save $500 off when you pay in full. That's the best way to save. There's also a 12-month payment plan if you need to stretch it out. And then there is need-based tuition, which we are always very happy to offer for people who, for whatever reason, might not be able to make the price point. I love making sure that astrology is really accessible for people. I love sharing astrology and trying to make it as broadly available as possible because I believe that it's a positive thing that changes people's hearts and minds and can change the world. So this is about making it accessible. And if you're like, I really want to study, but I'm on a fixed budget, I'm a single parent or whatever the case may be, check out the tuition assistance option and we might be able to help you with that. Okay, so that is that. What I want to do now is I'd like to just pop up the real-time clock on the screen so that we can get a sense of this transit before we get into it. So here's the real-time clock. Now Jupiter is entering Aries on May 10th, 2022, and you'll see that represented, if I can find my little, oh, you know what? My Epic pen is not open. Let's open it. Here we go. All right, so you'll see there's Jupiter entering Aries, and this is in the evening on May 10th, Eastern time here in the United States. The timeline for this transit is interesting. Jupiter spends a total of about a year, but sometimes with retrogrades, it's not like it's all 1 year at once. So with this transit, you're going to see, for example, Jupiter will be in Aries from May 10th to October 28th of this year. It backs off through retrograde back into late degrees of Pisces at the end of October. And then December 20th, it enters Aries again, at which point it then stays in Aries all the way through May 16th before entering Taurus. So you have kind of two patches of Jupiter in Aries that we're looking at within the next year from right about now. As a result of that, we have some time, different time periods to really see and notice and feel Jupiter in Aries and what it's like. So we will be, in a sense, having to refresh on these themes toward the end of the year when Jupiter has gone into Pisces and comes back again into Aries, which is nice. It's nice because one thing that I like about having Jupiter do that little retrograde dance is you can, as an astrologer, a student of astrology, you can really feel and notice the difference of what Jupiter in Aries feels like compared to Jupiter in Pisces, or whatever the two signs may be that Jupiter is going back and forth between. That's nice because sometimes, a transit's going on for a long time and you kind of forget that, oh, it's like Pluto in Capricorn, for example. It's been there forever. People are, next March, when Pluto enters Aquarius, so I'll be spending a lot of time talking about that one, people will really feel, oh yeah, Pluto's not just like Capricorn. Pluto's not just going to express itself through the earthy feminine sign of Saturn. It's also going to express itself through this airy masculine sign of Saturn. And that's going to be a very different feeling. So similarly, it's a great year to get to know Jupiter in that regard because it will be going back and forth from Pisces to Aries, and you'll really notice the difference. So pay attention to those dates. We already did some biographical homework last week as well. So if you go back and listen to some of the episodes we did last week, we got some plant teachers that we talked about that can be good allies during the Jupiter and Aries period, kind of talking about harnessing some of the Jupiter and Aries qualities in your personal life. And we also talked about Jupiter in Aries in terms of some of the deeper spiritual meanings, and biographically also looking back in time during these specific periods, what do you notice and what were some of the things happening in the collective and themes that we reflected on therein. So we've already done a bunch. Today I want to take it to a slightly different place. I want to talk today about Jupiter in Aries as the subversion of our values, beliefs, convictions, or like guiding thoughts or ways of thinking. The reason for this is that Jupiter as a planet is going to embody things like the justice system, the courts, religion, universities, anything that tries to give some order or coherence or unity to the cosmos, to society. So law and order is actually a Jupiter thing. People always think law and order, think of Saturn. Saturn would be law and order if by law and order you mean something a little bit more like the consequences for breaking the law, or rigidity, or authoritarian rule, or something like that. Like Saturn has a little heavier connotation when it comes to law and order. Jupiter is like, the clean, beautiful feeling. I lived in DC, right? Something, the clean, beautiful feeling of walking around the Jefferson Memorial or the Lincoln Monument, or something like that. It's the feeling of the highest ideals that like a democracy should embody, or that ideally a religion embodies. Not the way, inevitably there's corruption, right? And just like Jupiter, Zeus as a god has this like hypocritical dimension. So there's that too. But ideally, Jupiter is about those things that give a coherent sense of order, learning, education, faith, the courts, legal systems, justice, fairness, etc. So Jupiter, wherever it goes, wherever it is traveling through the zodiac in our birth charts, is often going to have us reflecting on exactly those things: values, beliefs, convictions, guiding principles or thoughts, philosophy, religion, the dogma and doctrines that we consciously or unconsciously live our lives by. Okay. Now, when Jupiter enters the temple of Mars, Mars is a very subversive planet. Mars is a planet that likes to confront, that it presents us with competing philosophies. As a subversive presence, or as a competing voice or presence, Jupiter moving into Aries can thus represent challenges to our values, beliefs, convictions, and thoughts, or the subversion of our values, beliefs, convictions, thoughts. It could even represent something like social justice, the concern with advocating for things that you believe in, and subverting something that's unfair, like a principle that's in place that has, that needs to be overturned, or something that needs to be fought for, or whatever. So we've talked about that a little bit in some of the previous videos that I've done on Jupiter into Aries. But what I want to get at today is this idea that one of the most fantastic things that Jupiter in Aries can do is subvert our commonly held values, beliefs, convictions, and thoughts, almost exposing unconscious dogmas that we have in our life, ways that we take for granted certain truths or principles that maybe are unexplored, unexamined, that haven't yet stood the test of scrutiny or criticism, or that there's just some way in which, in order to grow, we need to challenge our commonly held thoughts or values, culturally, but also intellectually, spiritually, but also relationally. So in order to expand on this topic, before we dive into horoscopes, I want to read you something that comes from a book that I'm just finishing right now, called Religious But Not Religious, Living a Symbolic Life. I was almost done with it, but then I got hung up by COVID. So now that I'm testing negative for COVID, thankfully, I wanted to read, so I'm finally finishing it, and I wanted to read you guys this because it falls exactly in line with this particular sort of Jupiter in Aries as a subversion of our values or thoughts or beliefs. This is from a section on a chapter on the role of religion and the subversion of values. Now, this book is called Religious But Not Religious, and it's really good for people who are sort of allergic to religious institutions, but have almost like that saying, spiritual but not religious. But in this text, the author is really talking about how to walk a religious path or lifestyle in terms of the commitments of daily practices, something that's, of course, very important to me as a daily meditator. While not feeling like you're being subsumed by some kind of institutional trip, So, okay, anyway, this is called the subversion of values. It is certainly true that religion, as it is actually practiced, does not always, or maybe even often, live up to its purpose and potential. Religion is a human activity performed by human beings with all of their human tendencies and imperfections. We have to dig deeper than the initial surface impression if we are to gain a true understanding of the role religion is meant to perform. Now, remember, he's a Jungian too, so he's really talking about religion for the value of the soul places on religious experience. So he says, a good source of this deeper understanding, of course, is to turn to the insights of those who have lived a religious life and who have done the long and patient work of reflecting on religious matters and their function in human life. Some of the harshest critics of religion are, in fact, deeply religious. Here I would recall the words of Abraham Joshua Heschel, quoted earlier in chapter 4, in which he lays the blame for religion's defeats at the feet of religion itself. Quote, religion declined not because it was refuted, but because it became irrelevant, dull, oppressive, insipid. For Heschel, a mystic theologian and rabbi from a family of rabbis, the purpose of religion does not consist in satisfying needs, but in fanning discontent. Speaking from the perspective of the Jewish faith, he states, the aim of Jewish piety lies not in futile efforts toward the satisfaction of needs in which one chances to indulge and which cannot otherwise be fulfilled, but in the maintenance and fanning of the discontent with our aspirations and achievements, in the maintenance and fanning of a craving that knows no satisfaction. This quote reveals one of the essential roles that religion is meant to fulfill, to take our common and accepted values and subvert them. It challenges our collective assumptions and finds our usual aspirations and desires wanting. Often, because of this tendency, people judge religion to be repressive and restrictive, a means of exercising oppressive control over the hearts and minds of its adherents and desiring to do so over non-adherents. And it is true that there are elements within the religious world whose mode of expression is just this kind of repression and condemnation. We see this today in the United States, from those who interpret the subversion of social norms in terms of a war against the prevailing culture. At first glance, the quote above from Heschel might seem to belong to this category. Is it really true that all our efforts toward the satisfaction of our needs are futile? Is Heschel right when he states that we only chance to indulge our needs and that ultimately they cannot be fulfilled? Is there anything inherently wrong in seeking the satisfaction of such things as position, wealth, sex, or fame? Where do these things fit in the economy of the spirit? A closer reading, however, finds that there is no condemnation of the quote satisfaction of needs, no denouncing of our quote aspirations and achievements. Heschel is not issuing a moral injunction against the pursuit of desire. He is suggesting that there is a deeper and greater value in discontent, in dissatisfaction, and in longing. It is not that seeking satisfaction is wrong, it's just that it is fleeting. He's reminding us that satisfaction as a goal in itself, as an end, is ephemeral and, quote, futile. This perspective presents a challenge to the idea championed by such luminaries as Freud that religion is an infantile wish fulfillment of a longing for protection by a strong and benevolent father. According to this line of thinking, religion is a way of taking refuge in a comforting illusion of never growing up and of remaining a kind of dependent child. In contradistinction to this view, Heschel's suggestion is for a fanning of discontent and a, quote, craving that knows no satisfaction. The religious attitude, according to this view, is not one of resting in the comfort of an illusion. Rather, it is the difficult work of seeking truth by examining the way that we see and understand the world. For Heschel, religion and love of the divine meant compassion and action. It meant being affected by the suffering of those around us and doing something about it. He lived this out in his own life with his participation in the civil rights movement, marching with Martin Luther King Jr. Heschel believed that we should not defend ourselves from the human predicament with its experience of suffering. Quote, I would say about individuals, an individual dies when he ceases to be surprised. I am surprised every morning that I see the sunshine again. When I see an act of evil, I'm not accommodated. I don't accommodate myself to the violence that goes on everywhere. I'm still surprised. That's why I'm against it, why I can hope against it. We must learn how to be surprised, not to adjust ourselves. I am the most maladjusted person in society. Religion is a means by which we are brought into relationship with ultimate values. It can inspire devotion and commitment because through it, the ultimate values that it expresses are bestowed on one's personal existence. Fowler points out in regard to the things we value as having ultimate worth, that we do so because we feel they lend worth to our lives when we are in relationship with them. We have a need, in other words, to be in relationship with those powers that have the capacity to undergird more being. The values to which we are related and by which we order our lives, in other words, hold profound psychological and spiritual import. Too often, however, the values that the culture affirms seems to diminish our sense of being. Consumerism cannot support a healthy sense of self because its engine is lack and inadequacy. That is the task of most marketing campaigns, to heighten this sense of lack and to create and amplify a feeling of being inadequate, which in turn is meant to drive consumption. But as economist E.F. Schumacher points out, to make the, quote, cultivation and expansion of needs the primary driver of our economic system is the very antithesis of wisdom, which in turn is most often concerned with the overcoming of desire, described in different ways in the great religious traditions of the world. He goes on, and the rest of the chapter is amazing. And I know there's a little bit of a lengthy reading, but I really wanted to give you the sense of what he's talking about here and how this relates so nicely to Jupiter's entrance into Aries. Jupiter's entrance into Aries is like a reminder that, wait, I'm not satisfied here. Not all is well in the world. There's been progress. There are things I'm happy with, but there's more to come. There's more to go. So Jupiter in Aries can subvert your sense of being comfortable within the current paradigm that you're operating out of. It can disrupt, disturb, challenge, and present conflict to your values, to your beliefs, to your convictions, and to your thoughts, insofar as from a spiritual, psychological place, a place that values psyche, soul, imagination, and love, it is not good. It is not a good idea to try to get too comfortable here. I don't mean that we should throw ourselves into poverty, just like he was saying. I don't mean that we should throw ourselves into austerities, that we should, it's like I'm going to take vows of poverty and become a monk is what I'm trying to say. Or that I'm going to renounce the world or try to rid myself of desire. I can't, I'm not going to consume anything. It's like, no, what he's really talking about is making sure that we don't make comfort in this world the ultimate goal. It's not that you denounce it or renounce it or reject it. It's that you are careful to subvert your values, your choices, and the structures of your life insofar as they're not stoking a certain kind of flame of longing for something divine, transcendental, imaginative, spiritual. We should all be burning a little bit. The word passion means to suffer alongside of. So if there's not some area in our life where we're longing and we're suffering along with something that we're doing, something that we're creating, a relationship that we're in, a job that we're doing, there should be a sense of, we're carrying a little bit of a cross, so to speak. We're carrying there needs to be a sense that we are burning with a kind of divine discontent. I'm not satisfied with the way everything is. Not that we might take that to mean that I'm denouncing, renouncing, rejecting, judging, or condemning something, but that's not what we're talking about. It's more like if you're really, really in love with something, there's a sense that you don't want to be satiated. In Tantra, for example, it's like, don't go right for orgasm, build this thing. Feel what it's like to be burning with passion and longing. That from the standpoint of many mystical traditions, that kind of ecstasy is a greater kind of ecstasy than trying to be fully satiated. In a world that does nothing but keep moving, it's like that approach. If that's all you've got, if that's your only approach, you'd be so lucky to have the means to try to satiate yourself occasionally subverted, to have the paradigm of satiation itself subverted, to have that part of you that's an impatient consumer on any area of your life subverted. Jupiter in Aries comes in and it stokes up the flame that there's something more. You don't want that to play out in terms of like, I need more money, I need more this, I need more that, in things that are very fleeting. So the religious impulse, and the book is definitely not saying go join a religion, but he's talking about what religion actually is, as in what is religious experience, and what is it like to have a religious lifestyle. Most people who call themselves, they use the phrase spiritual, not religious, are actually, and oftentimes they're very religious insofar as religion means an active practice of, divine discontent, of addressing discontent, of being careful not to get too satiated by the highs, nor too depressed by the lows, but to stay in this burning middle place where you're curious, you're engaged, you're practicing reflection, and you're burning with with existence itself in a way that's progressively satisfying. Right? In another way, like a relationship in the way that intimacy builds and grows, or like lovers in the way that they build and grow the romantic and sensual connection without exhausting it. So we should be so lucky as to have Jupiter and Aries come in and essentially come, Jupiter and Aries can come through and it can fan all of this discontent. Things need to change, and you'll see it politically and culturally change. Right? But where is that coming from, and what is its value? Well, it would be in this case to subvert the feeling of trying to get too comfortable here, not only because it's really hard to do, impossible to do in a place that's always moving and changing, but also because there's something about burning with a certain it's a kind of discontent that's actually deeply ecstatic. So Jupiter and Aries, I'm going to now, what I want to do is take this kind of idea of Jupiter and Aries as subverting places in our life where we're trying to get comfortable, or where the paradigm needs to change, or something like that. And now let's apply it to these rising signs. So we're going to take this through the 12 whole sign houses, and I'm going to put this up on the screen now where you can see it. And we're going to put Jupiter in Aries in the first house. Okay, so this is this would be for Jupiter, Sun, or rising horoscopes. So if you are placing Jupiter in the first house, then where is that potential subversion happening? Where does the discontent come back in and invite you to awaken and to stay, to become more passionate and to potentially, learn to live in that place a little bit more? Well, it would be with your self concept, your self idea, your psychology, your behavior, your body, your physical appearance. People will frequently take up exercise programs. They'll lift weights. They'll, change their diet when Jupiter enters Aries in the first house. So they'll start something new that reflects some kind of discontent with the way I am. I need to be someone new. So that discontent can subvert your very idea of yourself, psychology, behavior, and things you're doing to subvert the norm or the status quo that you've been living with. So watch for that as Jupiter enters the first if you're in Aries rising. All right, so we're going to put this in the second house now, and that's for Pisces. We're kind of going backward through the zodiac. This is for Pisces sun or Pisces rising horoscopes. Now we're putting Jupiter into the second house, which is a place of money or resources. I'm not content with my current earning power. There's something that needs to change around my resources or my relationship to my resources or my material values. This is the kind of thing that will subvert the status quo when it comes to how you handle time, money, energy, resources, income, and expenditures, and it'll demand newness. Just remember that the big thing for everyone in this is to try to value the experience of discontent and change as something that the soul actually revels in. It's like, oh, I've got to make a change. It's going to be work. It's like, yeah, but don't try to get too comfortable here. Be happy with the dynamism that is life. Be, religious ecstasy, living a psychological life. Jung said the same thing too. It's not about trying to get comfortable and satiate your discontent once and for all through setting up a fortress of wealth or fame or whatever. None of that stuff really does it. It's about learning to enjoy, feel the burn, enjoy the burn, And if you learned, Jupiter in Aries is such a wonderful opportunity for us to learn how to do that. So see if you can notice that happening around the topic of money, resources, income, and expenditures. Changes might need to be made, but remember too that this is an opportunity to get wiser about the very topic itself. All right, let's go to the third house. So Jupiter is in the third house. This is for Aquarius rising or Aquarius sun. Jupiter in the third house says there is something that needs to change about my mind, my thoughts, the way that I communicate, maybe something regarding technology or media, the environment around me and that I live in. And there's this fire of discontent that's going to come in and potentially subvert the way you're thinking or the way that your environment works around you, the kinds of influences you have in your mind or environment. And it's going to say, no, it needs to change. Something needs to be different. So, but allow your mind to that discontent. Again, don't just jump right to the part where you make a change in the hope that the change you make will make you happy. Feel the burn. Enjoy the burn. I love this. Let's read that quote again really briefly. It's such a good quote. I'll just read the one little tiny piece of it here. If I can find it. He says, this quote reveals one of the essential roles that religious experience is meant to fulfill, to take our common and accepted values and subvert them. Yeah, he says, but in the maintenance and fanning of the discontent with our aspirations and achievement, in the maintenance and fanning of a craving that knows no satisfaction. Don't miss that part of it. Okay, so that applying that sense of subversion of values to the mind and to the environment. Let's go on now. So that is for Aquarians. Let's go, and we're going to put Capricorn on the ascendant, which places, this is Capricorn sun or Capricorn rising, places Jupiter in Aries in the fourth house, place of home and family. So notice Jupiter in Aries subverting your values, beliefs, convictions, and thoughts, the order and coherency that you experience relative to the topics of home and family karma. But also just note that it's a good time to remind myself, I am never going to be fully comfortable around home and family. Change is okay. Change is dynamic. Maybe my soul is needing or wanting whatever I'm being challenged by, or however my values or beliefs are being challenged in relation to home and family right now. All right, let's go along. So we back this up a little more. We're putting Sag on the ascendant, so Sag rising or Sag sun. You've got Jupiter in the 5th. This is the place of joy, creativity, and pleasure. I am not satisfied. I need a new kind of joy, a new kind of creative expression, a new kind of pleasure. In fact, the feeling of being challenged, the burning feeling of discontent, the feeling of needing to make a change. Try to value and appreciate that feeling as you're experiencing it and probably making some swift and exciting changes with regard to how you seek joy, creativity, and pleasure, the satisfaction of your sensual needs or desires. You could see someone getting pregnant around this time, which wouldn't be a surprise with Jupiter in the 5th house of pregnancy. But for me, what I'm hoping that people will experience is the feeling of, don't get comfortable here. There's some discontent that will come in and challenge or subvert you in some way. And that is that feeling. Try to enjoy it. Try to actually feel that this is life itself. It's a mighty, fiery river, and it's just flowing along, and try to experience the bliss of this newness rather than only feeling challenged by it, because some people are going to feel it that way. They're only going to feel the challenge of it. So going on to the 6th house, we have Scorpio rising, which places Jupiter in the 6th, place of work, sacrifice, and sickness. So you think now about the kinds of work or the kinds of sacrifice, or even facing illness or challenges or frustrations, and how these things are coming up as a means of subverting your mind, your thoughts, your values, your convictions, your beliefs, your operating paradigm. Don't be frustrated on top of the frustration. Try to experience this burning current that's coming through and the challenges you're facing as the religious numinous experience. This is the kind of experience your soul is actually craving. Try to double down on that. Tell yourself that every day, because then these challenges, the work you might have to do, the sacrifices you have to make, the sickness you might have to overcome, the roadblocks that are typical of the 6th house, you can experience these things as part of what makes life magnificent, of part of what keeps you engaged. You don't have to just feel like, oh, something's just trying to mess me up. All right, so there's the 7th house. Let's take and put Libra on the ascendant, which now puts Jupiter into actually, let's push it forward by a day. There we go. So Jupiter is in Aries in the 7th house when you have Libra sun or rising horoscope. That's the place of love and relationships. Notice how the status quo is not going to fly right now around love, around relationships, or your partner, if you're in a relationship, might be going through personal changes. This is, after all, their house. And so could it be that they are needing to grow, learn, expand, change, that dynamism is triggering some kind of change in them? Don't fight it. You may feel Jupiter in Aries, when it enters, it challenges us. It's like saying, you're going to think, you think about it this way? Well, how about thinking about it that way? Or, oh, you're comfortable with something? I think some change is needed. And it comes in, it's got a real hot, fiery, it's like got a little hot poker, that it's going to prod you with. And the initial feeling is going to be like, well, I thought everything was good. I don't want to change. This is kind of obnoxious, or it's kind of intense, or it's kind of sudden, or it's demanding. But life is beautiful because that discontent keeps coming on and pushing the river along. So try to trust it and try to put faith into what challenges are arising in that area of love and relationships. All right, let's go. And we're going to put Virgo on the ascendant, which pushes this into the 8th house. So your Virgo rising or Virgo sun, Jupiter in the 8th. What is it doing? Well, here's the place of debts, obligations, and entanglements, for better or worse. So people are obligated to us or indebted to us, or we to them. We are entangled with people emotionally and psychologically for better or worse in our lives. This place is like a place of karmic soul contracts. Jupiter comes into that house and provides new ones, but possibly by subverting or challenging old ones. So new karmic bonds, challenging old ones, as well as the nature of the bonds and entanglements, debts, or obligations that we have to others or others have to us, suddenly coming in and provoking, challenging, disrupting the norms. That's not easy. It's not easy to be entangled with other people, especially when people have a strong desire for something we are or have, or we have a strong desire for something that somebody else is or has. So don't let jealousy or covetousness take over, but also trust that whatever is being challenged right now in the bonds that you carry with other people, whatever newness is coming in and provoking change or creating a feeling of discontent, a burning passion that's not necessarily easy to deal with, but love it, accept it, put your faith in it, and see what happens if you can just feel the burn. All right, let's go ahead and we're going to put Jupiter in the 9th house, which is for Leo sun or Leo rising. Here now we're seeing Jupiter in the house of religion, beliefs, philosophy. This is sort of quintessential place for Jupiter in Aries to challenge your guiding thoughts or principles, to put challenging teachers in your life, to put beliefs or ideas that challenge old beliefs or ideas. And don't worry, don't have too much of a crisis about it. Just, it's a burning bush that's appearing before you. Love it. Wow, this is how life continues. This is how life's mighty currents keep roaring along. See if you can put your faith in the conflict, in the challenge, in the subversion that's rising up in the house of religion, beliefs, and philosophy. They say, that what I love about that passage is that essentially what the author is saying, and the authors he was quoting is saying, is that for most people, real joy, real deep existential, soulful sense of happiness is not found in worldly comforts, but is found in how meaningfully we live our lives in relation with the highs and lows, with suffering, with change, with dynamism, with discontent. The more interestingly you are able to relate to those qualities, typically speaking, the better your life goes, because it's intimacy with experience itself, trusting that it is of a divine nature that allows for you to be subverted or challenged by fiery Jupiter and Aries, but to say yes to it and to get the most out of it. So see how that's happening if you're a Cancer sun or rising in your 10th house of career. Watch for this to be a place where your career, your reputation, your sense of what's next for you professionally, where you're feeling called out in the world to do something to contribute your skills or gifts. There is change coming. There's subversion coming. There's challenge coming. There might even be an aura of hostility or power dynamics that are really pronounced. Love it. Trust it. Be a good person. Be patient. Be kind, because this one could be a little like, I'm going to win at all costs, especially in the 10th house. But feel the burning of Jupiter entering this fire sign and the challenge or the way you're feeling confronted by it, the way you're feeling provoked by it. Don't flip out. Don't lose your center. Trust it and see what kind of changes are ready to open up. All right, let's put Jupiter into the 11th, which means that we are at Gemini rising or sun signs. This is the house of friends, groups, and allies. What friends are challenging you right now? What groups are becoming a place for you that is very challenging to exist in? Maybe there needs to be a change made, or maybe you just need to feel the burn and allow yourself to be challenged. Be challenged by new groups of people, new allies and friends, new colleagues. Allow yourself to also challenge, have a challenging voice, a voice that might need to provoke a little, or that might need to stand up for something within a group or amongst friends. Also, what kinds of new resources are being made available to you through groups, friends, and allies? And how are they subverting what you thought you were doing or where you thought the plot line was taking you? Don't feel like the intensity, the hot poker stick of Jupiter in Aries is not trustworthy. Trust it. See what happens, especially when you place faith in where things are heading right now and in the challenges that are arising. Jupiter in Aries is like a battering ram knocking down the door of some area in your life. That's what we're trying to get at. And we're trying to get at the fact that if you react too quickly and trying to take that energy and flip it back into something that will make you comfortable and happy, you're living under the same old illusion and you miss the real opportunity of Jupiter in Aries, which is to stay alive in the dynamism that you are as a being in the divine creation, right? Okay, so 12th house. This is if we take, put Taurus on the ascendant or Taurus sun sign, then we have Jupiter in the 12th house, a place of shadows, a place where you can get some quality alone time, a place that is also about what you can and cannot control, all of which have tremendous value for us. I mean, Jupiter in Aries is the quintessential breakdown and challenge of your faith. It is the dark night of the soul where the sun rises afterward. That could be in terms of, moral or personal slipping. It could be in terms of doubts that you're working through. It could be in terms of a time of having to find faith with relatively more quiet or periods or places of solitude. It could also be about looking and starting to understand the wisdom of the shadows. Shadows aren't just evil. They contain wisdom in them. A lot of the times the shadow is nothing more than a sort of perverted reflection of a desire that we've not realized how to tend to properly. So what wisdom is there in the shadows, and how are you being challenged unconsciously to embody Jupiter in Aries, or to learn how to live with the reality of this hot battering ram that just wants life and change and fire and passion. That's not about, get comfortable here in this world, but it's about the dynamic passion of being a being for whom being is a problem. I think it was Heidegger who said that. A being for whom being is an issue. So, at any rate, I have tried my best to embody in today's talk the passion that I'm talking about, and the sense that, look, there's not every day I'm a creature of comfort. I'm a Taurus rising. I'm a creature of habit. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with seeking comfort. There's nothing wrong with seeking stability. There's nothing wrong with seeking peace, and there's nothing wrong with seeking, the welfare and comfort of other beings. We're not talking about that. We're talking about that sense that, like, if I just do enough things and manipulate enough things, I can get really comfortable here in this world, and I'll be protected from discontent, suffering, challenges, provocation. I can get into a place where I'm not poked or irritated ever. But the great sages and all the great traditions, like a good Jupiter and Aries, have told us, it's better if you cultivate a relationship with that fire of discontent. Feel it as the river of life, and everything changes. We're baptized by both fire and water this year. With Jupiter in Pisces, a lot of water. With Jupiter in Aries, a lot of fire. So in both of them, the one coming on the cusp of spring, the other at the beginning of spring, both suggest to us that we're ready for change. We're ready to keep the story. Do you seek in someone you love? Do you seek some final resolution of your love? Like, can we just get to a point where we love each other so perfectly that we blow up and no longer exist? You know what I mean? That's not really the point of loving relationship, is it? No, what makes relationships so interesting, what I know as I'm recording this is so interesting about going downstairs and celebrating our Mother's Day today, as I'm recording this on a Sunday, is that my relationship, it'll be something new. And the tensions and the pains and the joys will keep going. And that dynamism, that's the passion for life. I'm going to burn with this experience. So that's what we're trying to communicate today as a value of the soul. This is what religion, in a sense, ultimately in his book, he's saying is supposed to provide us with. I see astrology as a kind of religious experience, as a kind of religious lifestyle, tuning into astrology every day, listening to, these sermons from the stars. It doesn't have to be an institutional thing. It's a lifestyle that says I have practices that make sure that I go back to the failing, to the burning, to the suffering, to the passion of life. I have to have practices. I have to have YouTube podcasts. I have to have whatever that bring me back into a place that is not about getting comfortable, but that is about deepening intimacy. And that's a different kind of way of living life. I'm not looking at reality as something where I need to get comfortable once and for all. I'm looking at reality as something that I can love more and more in an ongoing way. And please don't stop it. Let's go to church here. Let's go to Jupiter and Aries church. So I hope you guys have picked up on that today and enjoyed the mood. We will be looking at Jupiter in Aries again on Tuesday from a slightly different angle, because it's good as Jupiter enters a new sign to have lots of different ways to hold it. Hopefully today has been helpful for you guys. Hey, look, if you have stories to share, I would love it if you did that by sharing them in the chat box. So if you want to share a story, use the hashtag grabbed. Or email us, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. We have eclipse stories. We have Jupiter into Aries stories that we're going to be sharing coming up pretty soon. We have the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction stories. I've been aggregating a bunch of good ones, so we'll be ready to share some of those soon. Feel free to share your stories or your own reflections and thoughts about Jupiter and Aries in the comment section, especially if you were born with Jupiter and Aries. How have you experienced this energy? Would love to hear from you guys. Don't forget, like and subscribe, share your comments. It helps the channel grow. You can find the transcript of this talk on the website, nightlightastrology.com. And don't forget, my new class starts on June 5th. Check it out on my website. All right, take it easy, everyone. Bye.